boss stage going on.
Yeah.
Oh. How you doing, Chris?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. As we said, you are also the commissioner of the LCS, which is not reflected in the words.
No, but it's, you know, we're all family here, so.
You would describe yourself as Adam Silver, but a little bit shorter. Was the
So a little shorter and without as much money.
That's all right. Let's talk a little bit about Riot Games and about League of Legends and the eSports area of that brand. It has grown into quite an enormous thing.
Yep.
One of the challenges that you face, though, is competing for eyeballs on the league, but then also against itself as time goes on, we'd run the risk of people maybe growing past it. How do you keep audiences engaged with a game that is now over 10 years old?
Yeah, we, approaching 10.
Approaching, I'm sorry.
Don't age us too much.
That was very rude of me.
We have a lot of different ways. So the game itself, we update it every 2 weeks, which is revolutionary for a game. It was when we started it. New champions, new items, new balance changes. If you haven't played the game in a month and you go back, the game feels different. And that for our fans is kind of what breaks up the normal monotony of playing a game, right? So rather than having the same experience that you have all the time, not only do you couple it with playing against other people, which changes your experience every time, but the game feels different every time. So we have that. We're constantly evolving the game. We're trying new modes. We're trying new champion designs. We want the game to constantly feel fresh. If we made, you know, every character felt the same as the last one, or it's like, oh, this is just like that character they released 2 years ago, except it does one different thing, right? That doesn't draw people in. And then we look for our big cultural moments. So at Worlds in Korea this past year, the opening act for our World Finals, which drew almost 100 million viewers, was an AR K-pop group called KDA. And that video on YouTube is pushing somewhere around 250 million views right now. You know, is on pace to be our most successful video ever, the video that we released for it. So we don't want to be just a game or just a game company. We aspire to be a lot more. We have characters that our fans love. We have moments that our fans love, and we want to continue to create those and draw people in and show them not only the amazing world of League of Legends, but the amazing stories that we tell week over week through the LCS, the League Championship Series, our league here in North America.
I think maybe it's a bit of a double-edged sword, too. You're appealing to audiences that have been with you for a long time who know the game very well, but you also have the challenge of appealing to new audiences, which is kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Is there a high level of entry for new people to get into the game, even as a spectator, not even just playing it?
Yeah. My wife, when I'll put it on at home, she doesn't play games, she doesn't know anything about League of Legends, and she always tells me it's just a bunch of flashing lights and she can't follow it. So we do have that. The high barrier to entry is a double-edged sword for us. League of Legends is a complicated game. It's like 4D chess on top of 4D chess.
8D chess.
Yeah, 8D chess.
16D chess.
Sure. Yeah, I was a lawyer, not a math guy. Excuse me. So when you wind up with a game that complicated, it makes it hard for someone who's just starting to play or just starting to watch to really get into it. And the benefit is, once you've spent the time to watch a little bit or play a little bit, and you kind of get over the hump, it's actually really hard to disengage from the game, which for us is a good thing. So now our challenge becomes, how do I get you to and over that hump? So for playing the game, we're constantly reworking our new player experience. I want you, if you've never played before, have you ever played before?
I have, yes.
Okay. So
not good. But
neither am I, and I played for years. If you've never played before, I want you to be able to download the game, load it up, and get a tutorial that helps you learn the basics of the game and kind of brings you along so that when you hop into games, you feel like you're always learning something. That's what we talk about a lot at Riot, the mastery curve. Like you want to, every game you play should make you a little bit better than the last time you played. From an esports perspective, we're talking now a lot about our channel strategy. That how do you, right now we take our product, which is our LCS broadcast every Saturday and Sunday, you guys should all watch, and we just put it out there, right? We put it on Twitch, on YouTube, on ESPN+. We take highlights, we throw them on Twitter, we take pictures, we put them on Instagram, but that's it. That's not a way to identify and draw fans in, right? It's just saying we have a thing, you should watch a thing, and if you like it, you should keep watching, but there's no ability, if you've never watched before and you've never played before, there's no ability for you really to sit down unless you get drawn into a story So we're exploring ways to make the viewing experience easier for people. We've done new player streams in the past where you can watch and our casters will kind of give you a much kind of higher level explanation rather than, they picked this champion because it's a counter to that champion and they're going to, buy these items and they're going to use these strategies. They can kind of talk you through, all right, well, this is mid lane and there's, a champion from each team that will start the game in mid lane and the goal is to get into their base and blow up the nexus and win the game. So we're starting to talk a lot more about ideas like that. If you want to create a multi-generational game, you have to make sure that more generations are watching, right? I need a way to, like I've got a 6-year-old daughter, I need a way to explain the game to her other than her sitting down and asking why the snake lady keeps shooting stuff at the guy with the big hammer.
I feel like you have I'm going to call it a problem, it's not really a problem, but a unique problem in that you have a very young viewer base. It's sort of the audience that a lot of broadcasters are trying to reach you have already.
Yep.
You have an odd problem in trying to reach an older audience. I'm assuming, are you guys interested in that older audience, the mothers and the fathers, to get them in?
We're interested in anyone who wants to watch or play League of Legends. I want them to come and watch and play League of Legends. We tend to lose the younger crowd to the Fortnites of the world, right? So the audience used to go from Minecraft into nothing into hopefully our game. And now they're really bridging Minecraft to Fortnite, which is just Minecraft with guns. Right. And hopefully from there into games like League of Legends. So Fortnite serves a really great purpose for us in helping to kind of gamify culture. It's like the amount of people I've sat down and they're like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm in eSports, it's professional video games. Like, oh, like Fortnite? My son plays Fortnite, my daughter, my niece, my nephew, whoever. Like those are great conversations to have because it creates this point for people where they are now familiar with the concept that people can just play a video game and it's not a bad thing, right? It's not, hey, turn the video game off, go outside, get some exercise. It's this really well-established thing. And you see that from influencers like Ninja who go out and do Ellen and the Super Bowl. Like it really brings this mainstream credibility. On the other side, you've got old farts like me who watch. I'm certainly not our target demographic. And we want to reach those fans too, but we reach them in a different way. So you talk to younger fans about kind of the excitement of the sport. You talk to older fans about the stories. I grew up in Jersey. I'm a huge Yankee fan. My story was always F the Red Sox. So like I used to tell people if the aliens came to Earth and played the Red Sox for the fate of the planet, I would root for the aliens because I would never ever root for the Red Sox. And the storylines I wanted to see were Derek Jeter and Wade Boggs when he came over from the Red Sox to the Yankees. Those were the stories that grabbed me. The folks who make our content, they'll talk a lot about Bird and Magic and those storylines, right? The old guys in the office who are hearkening back. We want to tell those stories. I want to tell the story of Doublelift and B. Erickson playing on the spring final stage to try to settle the argument of who's the greatest of all time when they're both tied with 5 championships each and they're former teammates and they're good friends, right? Those are stories that make you sit down, even if you've never watched League of Legends, even if you don't care about esports. It is the kind of story that makes you sit down and say, I'm going to give this a couple minutes of my time because the story sounds interesting.
Yeah. To latch on what you just said, I'm also a Yankee fan, so I'm glad to hear that.
Nice.
And I would also root for the aliens. Outside of that, this is not just a traditional sport, though, because there's also a lore built into the game. So you have the human interest stories where you can connect to players that draw people in, but you also have this deep lore that maybe appeals to people who aren't more familiar with traditional sports, don't think as much about the human interest side of it from the athletes. So do you try to straddle that line to try and reach different pockets of audiences with those two different aspects of the game?
Yeah, and it's just a matter of kind of the product and message you put out. Like we have a partnership with Marvel, and they're creating comic books. They have we had a whole series about Ash, one of our original characters. I think they teased another issue this morning about another League of Legends character, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to say who that character is in case I'm wrong. But those are the ways that we can get our fans to interact with lore. Above that, though, like what we do want people to latch onto, like the 2016 Worlds is kind of my best story for this. So I had just taken the job at Riot. I still worked in New York City. I was down the block from Madison Square Garden, and they Worlds 2016 semifinals between SKT and Rox Tigers, arguably the 2 best teams in the world at that time, were playing at MSG. I called Riot, I begged for tickets, I said, you were willing to hire me, please just let me come. So I came out and I watched one of the greatest 5-game series in League of Legends history. It was won at the end of the day by SKT. and Faker, who is arguably the best League of Legends player in the world. But the other team had an upstart jungler named Peanut. He was a crowd favorite, like MSG chanting his name. The series ends, SKT steps up, Faker waves to the crowd, and the crowd starts to chant for Peanut. And Faker came off the stage and through a translator said to the media, "I don't know why they're chanting his name, I won." And like those are the stories that when people watch, like I want them to find the Peanut in the match, right? The guy that they can attach themselves to and root for. I want them to look at Faker, right? Faker's your Michael Jordan. He's your, LeBron is a bad example at this point, but he's your Steph Curry. He's the guy you watch and you root against because everybody else is rooting for him, and you look for the guy on the other side who can put up a fight against that. And like, while the lore in the game is great, and there are going to be a lot of people who can connect through that, and I hope they do. Like, I hope they watch the matchups in the game, and they don't think that two champions, they don't focus on the fact that two champions were picked because they're the best in the meta. They focus on the fact that in lore, they're enemies, and like there's a greater level for them there. But as a sport, we really want to focus on those storytelling moments and finding stories that like every fan can attach themselves to, or a team or a player or something. Because there has to be a reason, as a Yankee fan, that you sat down and watched the Yankees other than your parents putting a Yankee hat on you.
Right.
And at some point you had a favorite player, or you had a favorite moment, or you went to a game and something happened, and like that was your connecting moment. My moment in esports was that match in 2016. It was in game 2. Prey shoots an arrow across the map, an ash arrow. If it hits him, if it hits the guy he's aiming at, Duke, on the other team, they win the game. If he misses or it doesn't get there in time, they lose the game. He shoots the arrow and all of MSG goes quiet. Like you hear the and like no one talked or breathed or made a sound, and the arrow hit him and the place erupted. Like shaking like it was, if the Knicks ever win a championship, it was shaking like I would imagine it would at that moment. And it was the moment for me at that live event where like everything changed in my view of esports, because I had that experience to attach myself to. And my job now is to find those experiences for everybody else and make sure that we're delivering them week over week.
So how are you marketing those stars then? Because for the layman, people who aren't familiar with this, I don't know if they can recognize a star player from this league yet. So how do you get those players to that recognizability?
Yeah, we spend, and it's a matter of trying to figure out who we're actually marketing those guys to, because I don't know if I need you to recognize Doublelift, but when you sit down, I want you to hear his story on broadcast and kind of attach yourself to the story. Like you can kind of find your way to being familiar with the person, but it kind of works on 2 levels. How we're actually marketing our stars, right? We're doing it in a couple of ways. One, we're relying on our stars to market themselves, which sounds dumb. But streaming is a thing, and our biggest stars are stars because they stream, and because they can sit down with 25,000 fans at the same time and play a game and talk to their fans and answer questions and be a human. And they can provide that like human connectivity I never had with Derek Jeter, right? Like Derek Jeter never answered my questions. Like I didn't get to watch him warm up or take fungo and like talk to me while he was doing it. And that's an advantage that we have as a sport. Our other piece around that is our storytelling. So when we're making content pieces, we want to take the guys who are just below that star level and give them enough exposure that when our stars retire, those guys can step up and there's a fan base there. But at the same time, when we have Doublelift, who plays for Team Liquid, and B. Erickson, who plays for TSM, arguably 2 of our biggest personalities playing in the same game, the game becomes about them. And we want people to be able to root for a team through the player. And kind of continue that journey with them.
There's a danger, though, in letting is not the right word, but in players being so accessible to their audience. I mean, we've all seen examples of people saying things that they might not have meant to say, they shouldn't have said on a stream, on Twitter. How do you navigate those they're dangerous and they're murky waters?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time with our players, and with our teams and with our players. Letting them know like what our expectations are around their behavior. And what we've seen is that our players spend a lot of time with the other players on their team. So if you're a rookie and you join a team, you'll have the older guys who sit you down and let you know that there's a certain way you have to behave or you're going to lose your career. If you have a couple of drinks, let's say you're over 21, you have a couple of drinks, you hop on your stream and you go on a homophobic rant, like your career is over. Like your whole salary's gone. You are likely you're definitely suspended, you may be banned, no team is going to want to touch you, and just like that, regardless of your skill level, like you have just alienated your audience, your team, and the league in one felt swoop.
Is this in a contract that they sign when they sign up for the league, or is
so
it just something that's communicated?
There are rules around player behavior, and all of our teams have, for the most part, if not all of them at this point, I don't want to speak sort of too broadly, but they all have morals clauses in their contract. They all have codes of conduct. So there's just no way, there's no reality in which that player kind of continues to play, even when they invariably wake up the next day and say they're sorry. But what we focus on a lot more is sort of the in-game behavior of our pros when they're playing solo queue and they're in League of Legends. If you're good enough, right, you can go home and log in and potentially be in a game with or against a pro player. So kind of like if you play basketball and you go to play a pickup game, like LeBron James could show up at your pickup game. And that's it's a great experience as a fan and a player to be able to kind of hang with them and have those experiences. But it brings with it a lot of issues for pro players. So if you're a pro player and you're just trying to have an afternoon and play a game or get some practice in or try something new, you'll have someone who shows up and recognizes your summoner name, your in-game name, and decides that like you're going to be their target of entertainment. So they're going to say stuff to you in game. They're going to treat you in a way to try to evoke a reaction out of you,
right, of course,
right, and get their 15 minutes. So we spend time with our pros around that too. That you're just different now, and you have to move forward understanding that there is a different level of expectation, and your paycheck and your future are reliant on your good behavior the same way it is for an NBA star or an NFL star or a pro hockey player or whatever else.
I think all games, all media titles are competing for people to spend as much time with them as possible. We want eyeballs on the screen of whatever the title is. You have an added problem of being a sports league as well, and you need to develop talent to keep the league going.
Yep.
So how are you developing talent for younger people? Because what is going to make somebody think that being a league player is a more viable option than playing some other esport?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that.
Sure.
So let's start with why would someone want to play league over being a professional anything else player.
Sure.
We work a lot to make being a pro LCS player an aspiration for our fans. Part of it is money. If a pro LCS player makes an average of $300,000 in guaranteed base salary before any bonuses or prize pools or anything else.
And is that the base salary? Can you say?
So the minimum salary in the league is $75,000.
Okay.
So we clearly have folks who are at that $75,000 level. We clearly have folks making a lot more, but
right.
They average out, our 50 starting players average out somewhere north of $300,000.
Okay. Right.
Then you have the ability to win prize pools at a local level. You have the ability to win prize pools at an international level. And if you go off and you win worlds, we'll make a skin in the game that is reflective of your choice of character, your movements. You help our design team design a champion, and then when we sell it, we will rev share a piece of that directly back to you as a player. So money is nice, but there's also the ability to play on a bigger stage than you can normally play on. So if you played in our spring finals, which happened in St. Louis 2 weeks ago, you played on a stage in front of 8,200 screaming fans with more than 600,000 people watching you, and there is something about being on that stage and hearing the crowd chant TSM or Team Liquid, chant your name when you wave, the crowd pops, that you can't get with most other esports. Mm-hmm. If you wind up at an international tournament and you were playing in Worlds in China in 2017, you were playing in the Bird's Nest, which is the Olympic Stadium in Beijing, and it was sold out. So you had, I think we had somewhere around 50,000. You don't quote me on the number, but to stand on a stage and have 50,000 fans cheering you on to play League of Legends is definitely an experience you can't have with any other game. Right. And we aspire as a game company to just treat our pros and our fans in a way that nobody else treats their fans and pros. We spend a lot of time working with our pro players in the LCS to make sure that they're in the environment they want to be in, that that kind of the league and its functions are working in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're short on time, so I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
What would you view as League's biggest competition now? Is it more traditional sports? Is it other esports? What is your biggest competitor?
So I made the joke to you over, when I walked in that Netflix talks about sleep being its biggest competitor. you know, I think for us, maybe the biggest competitor is Netflix, right? I mean, there's no, like, I don't want to say it's another esport because it's not. I don't want to say it's a conventional sport because it's not. It really is anything that takes your time away from watching and playing League of Legends is something that I want to minimize. So if I can, if I had a way to stream Game of Thrones inside the League client so that you didn't have to stop playing in order to watch the episode on Sunday, I would do that. Ultimately, we want to create a really healthy cycle for people where you can play a bunch of League of Legends, you can watch a bunch of League of Legends, you can go to sleep, go to school, come home, and do it again. Everything else around there, like while a fun distraction, you know, we talk about League of Legends kind of being the nice steady line. So a new game, Apex came out, great game, had a huge pop when it came out. A bunch of people in our office were playing it, and then after a while, like as those folks kind of played it and tried it out, everyone comes back to League. And that's part of the mastery curve. That's part of patching the game every 2 weeks. We want to create kind of the old faithful that you can always come back to and that's always there and is always the experience that you're looking for.
Yeah, well, I think you guys have really proven your longevity at this point. So thank you very much, Chris, for talking to me and telling me about all this, and everybody else for joining us.